Hi everybody, I'm Laurie Cadden, and today we're here in the beautiful studios of ECTV to do a special show for the Northeastern Pennsylvania Center for Independent Living on a grant that they received to make you all aware of the struggles, in many cases, of people with disabilities and their ability to vote. And it's very important that we get the word out. This grant was done and given, and they're very proud of it. And this is one of the last steps in the grant process that they put forth to make this come to fruition, and that is to educate the public on why they did it, what it is you can look out for, and how things need to change, and for laws to be upheld since 2002 and many other laws that go forward, that were before it. We want you to make sure they're held. You have to almost be a vigilante in many cases of making sure that these that anyone with a disability can come in and vote. Whether we talked earlier, whether it's not just people with disabilities who are in chairs, Keith, correct? It's canes or walkers or eyesight or coming out of having recently had surgery. Things that you take for granted, that people get out of their cars, walk in and vote, that so many others struggle with. So we want to make sure you understand that's what this is. We're going to educate you a little bit about that, but I want to just give you some pointers. We have 2 million of our residents of voting age in Pennsylvania that are disabled. We have approximately 20% of the citizens of Northeastern Pennsylvania are identified as people with disabilities. And I love this one. If people with disabilities had voted in the last presidential election, we would have had 10 million more votes than we had in the last election. That is astounding to me. So we're going to talk to you, we're going to educate you, I'm going to introduce you to this wonderful cast of characters, and trust me when I tell you, they are. We've just had a lot of fun with them before. They're all smiling, and once again, I am very fortunate because I have great odds of being the only woman and 3 handsome men. So, and Thom Welby made me say that. So joining me over to my far right is Mr. Thom Welby, who really needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him.
Thank you.
He's here on behalf of State Rep Mr. Marty Flynn.
Yes.
Thom has been a crusader in this, in the surveys that we'll talk about, making sure that people understand and getting these surveys out, which was crucial to the grant and to the understanding, Thom, of what there is not when it comes to being able to vote as a person with a disability. Next we have CIL's finest, CIL, C-I-L, Center for Independent Living, love it, Mr. Keith Williams. And if you don't know him, you've been living under a rock, because Keith, what do we talk about? How long you been around?
A few years.
A few years, and look at his tan. We talked about that too.
That's
Look,
right.
He's not even Italian, Thom.
No, I'm
Look
not.
look at the skin color on him.
Don't know where it comes from
Here's
other
what
than the sun.
He said, I love the sun. I said, it's good to you because you don't even have any wrinkles. And then I have a new guy who I just met who's adorable. His mother looks like a teenager, trust me. She really does. She's over there in the audience at Peanut Gallery with Sharon Quinn. So we have Mr. Christian Budney, correct, Christian?
That's right.
How you say it? And
Correct.
you also work at CIL. You said you were going to Marywood. You did an internship
Correct.
at CIL, and then you were hired. Have You
Yep.
got your master's, and you have your MSW.
Correct.
And you're there helping out and helping run the show over there.
Yeah, I enjoy a lot of advocacy.
And well, are you
great.
learning anything from this one next to me?
Yeah, well, I said before,
Yeah, tell everybody.
I lost a little
Hair.
since I've been working with Keith, but I think I made Keith's hair a little gray.
Christian made his hair gray, and he made his less.
And you have it on tape, so it
That's
must be,
it.
so it must be true.
Listen, we only tell the truth around here.
That's right.
So Thom, we want to talk about the grant was intended to determine the accessibility, which we need to talk about. Accessibility, what does that mean? I want you to say what you said to me earlier, because that is so important. For persons with disability in voting sites throughout 4 counties, Luzerne, Lackawanna, Wyoming, and Susquehanna. You did a lot of the surveys. The surveys are here. I'm rattling papers, but they're here. They were simple. They were straightforward. Keith, you said you had them laid out in a way that it's from the minute you get to the place, see the place, getting out of your car, going in and voting, and the process it took to get there, and what the end result was. Thom filled out this. On your end, Thom, you've done this. Both of them has said you have worked tirelessly in this process. What did you find with that?
Well, we first went into it wanting to see how we've grown from years ago when the voting places for a good bit of it was the garages in the neighborhoods. And we've gone from that into public buildings that are accessible. What we consider accessible. Accessible not meaning is it easy to get to the building itself, but are you able to complete all of the areas that I'm sorry, does the polling place itself answer all of the questions? And that is, first, when you pull up there, first, is it clearly marked where there is handicap accessible parking? Is there not only handicap accessible parking, that being just a handicap spot, but is there room for a van to allow the
Ramp.
the power chair, the ramp to get out? And a lot of them, people just don't think about that. And a lot of it, and I know that I speak on behalf of the entire Northeast delegation, both the House and the Senate, all of the legislators in this area want all people engaged in the process, want everybody to provide their input, and that means providing their input in the polling place as well. And then it got to, is the entrance clearly marked? Can you can you get through? There was one place that I went to, and I'll name names. It was West Scranton High School. I pulled up to West Scranton High School. The parking was fine. Everything was fine there. And I went to go into the polling place entrance, and it said handicap accessibility around the corner. Well, I walked around the corner, and there was nothing marked any further. Then I walked around another corner, and I was back in the cinder area where I went to school there. We used to have gym out there. And again, nothing clearly marked. I didn't know where I was supposed to go. And I went to this school, so I knew to go around the next corner and that there was a door there. And that door was marked handicap entrance, but there was no bell, there was no window peephole, there was no way to get in the door, and I had to stand there and bang on the door, not knowing what was on the other side. I didn't recall what was on the other side, if it was the furnace room that was on the other side or what it was. So that was a real problem in one of the areas where we would expect a public high school would be fully accessible,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. At least at that particular point.
Did someone eventually answer the
Yeah.
door?
I came around the other side.
And did you say something when you went
Yeah,
there?
I did.
then?
I sat and talked with them, and they pointed out that there are ways to get in, easier ways
Okay.
to get in, but that wouldn't be known by somebody
right, 'cause
from
you-
the outside.
right, 'cause you-
So that's something that they're going
Yeah.
to deal with, and that's nice. It was addressed. We now realize that, and it can be addressed. And that was the case with a lot of the different places that people visited. It's something that we're not conscious of. At least
Right.
I'm not, as a person that doesn't have to deal with that. And we want to know that, and we want to, be able to correct it.
Because it is true, if you're not, it's not something that you think of because you're not, or you don't have someone in your family. You really, I mean, I have to tell you, when Sharon called and said, we got this grant, and I'm thinking, I never ever even thought about it, because I assume that
Yeah, you see,
it's
when we moved out of the
accessible.
garages, that everything was good.
I never would have thought there was an issue.
And-
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's really important also because the population that will be affected by this is growing every year. We have an aging population that is experiencing motor difficulties. They're hip injuries and knee injuries and leg injuries, and we have more and more and more of our population are going to be facing this in the future. And to tell that some of, well, even myself, to tell me or someone that's older than myself that I can't get in there to vote, I don't react well to that. I believe that voting is very important. I think that everybody should vote, and if you don't vote, you shouldn't say anything.
Right.
I think it's sacred.
Exactly. And
And
love
I
the
wouldn't
people.
want to be turned away because I didn't have access to the polling machine itself.
Right.
We have an
Further-
acronym for, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, furthermore, people with disabilities shouldn't be required to vote absentee.
Yeah.
Do you find that
yeah.
happens?
Well, I've spoken about that, and I've heard the comment saying, people with disabilities could just vote absentee. That's a perfect solution. Well, it's a part of the democratic process that
yeah.
I've learned, you know, since I was 18 years old. I enjoy going down to the voting site. I enjoy casting my vote. I mean, it's just not the same. I mean, it's almost like, you know, you're not part of the process then.
You want the experience of it all, which
Exactly.
is totally different when you file absentee. And it doesn't matter anyway, because that should not happen in 2014, which is where we are now, Keith. This should
Thank
not
you for
be,
that.
it should not be happening. Again, we have to be conscious of it. So Keith, you said to me earlier that, you know, from the survey and how you did it, how it was laid out specifically. Why don't you talk a little bit of how you strategically put this together and what the results overwhelmingly showed?
Sure. Yeah, let me just touch real quickly upon an important point that Tom made earlier. What I was going to say is there's an acronym that we throw around
Sure.
a lot called TAB, which stands for Temporarily Able Body, and it gets to your point that somebody at one point or another during his or her life is bound to experience a disability, even if it's something very small and very minor, like a sprained thumb, and that person likes cooking and is good in the kitchen, but now it affects them. Well, magnify that, take that on a larger scale. If someone might have difficulty walking, even if it's only temporary, what we're advocating for is going to benefit everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
So as far as the survey goes, we took a look at the major issues, the major access points within a polling site. A lot of the points that we've heard from people with disabilities over the years where they run into problems. We took the Department of Justice's survey that's very thick. It has many pages, extremely comprehensive, and boiled it down to a series of about 12 or 13 key questions. We wanted to keep it practical, usable for people, keep it to one page and have a second page for comments so people could put some explanatory information in there. And what we did is we approached it logically. You pull up to the polling site, you either get dropped off or you drive yourself. What is the parking situation like? Are there accessible parking spaces or not? Once you leave the vehicle or get dropped off, what's it like to get on the sidewalk? Is there a curb cut or ramp, or isn't there potentially a barrier? And then just right through, the entrance to the building, but then we get into nitty-gritty issues that are particular just to this grant. What is the access like to the voting area, to the booths? Does the polling site have an accessible polling machine, the electronic machines? That's one of the issues in particular that we were curious about, and that we wanted to glean that information. How many of these sites in the 4 counties had at least one polling machine? So that was very important. And what was the staff like when somebody went in to
You mean
to
their
vote?
demeanor towards the
Correct.
issue? Okay.
Correct. Were they helpful?
Okay.
So we measured it out in a series of yes, no questions and left some spaces on there for people to comment as well. So now we're in the process
Of
of
compiling it?
compiling all of that.
Do you have can you glean anything from just a basic overview, what it's looking like? I mean, are we in a good space or bad space?
Lackawanna, some are better than others. The numbers show that many of Lackawanna's are in good shape, but there are some that definitely will need some improvement. Tom touched on one of them. We know of a couple of schools where there are some sites now that really have some accessibility issues, some problems. So it's also going to be interesting to see what happens with the other 3 counties once we tabulate all of that data.
I also was reading some of the information, and I found it interesting because I thought about this too, but never really thought on the level I am today, is people who just don't even register to vote. They just don't even bother, because I'm sure either their caregiver, their whomever they're with, they think, well, what difference does it make, or the hassle I might encounter. Do you find that when you talk to people, anybody here, did that conversation come up? Hey, I didn't even bother to have them registered, or they never asked, we never did it.
I think that happens, and unfortunately, it happens in people with and without disabilities.
I know, yeah,
But keeping it to the issue,
Right.
the population of people with disabilities, it gets to your point earlier when you cited those numbers
Mm-hmm.
and statistics, which show what a sleeping giant of a majority
kidding.
people with disabilities are. So if people with disabilities change that mindset and realize that we do have the power and get out there and register to vote, that is the first step.
Yeah, I will say that just drives me crazy anyway, Tom, to your point. Why would you not vote and register to vote and vote? Why wouldn't, it just doesn't make any sense, considering the fight we had to get, we as women here especially, to do that. So, Kristen, talk a little bit, if you would, about some of the grants. You were in a documentary, which you want to talk about, which ended up sort of like the beginning of trying to get this whole thing together. So talk a little bit about that and what happened.
Yeah, well, this documentary that I participated in, it was for Election Day 2012, the primary, and it was done by Melissa Scroy and Dan Kimbrough of Misericordia University. It was great. It was all about voting accessibility, and that was really what brought attention to myself on the lack of accessibility. And I participated. I went down to my local site, and they helped me bring to light some inaccessibilities that I really haven't even thought of. But things such as van, the ramp loading areas for a van, where I often get dropped off. So if I have to, I could just park far away, because I'm also in an electric wheelchair. So I'm not really burning too many calories pushing or getting too exhausted. But there's many sites we found. It was a good theme of no lines for vans to get let out, which could be an issue. Another thing that we found was signage. Signs that say the accessibility entrance is over here, or bathroom accessibility was another big problem. Which when you go to vote, you typically are only in there for 5 minutes and you don't need the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
But why should a person that's disabled not be able to be a poll worker if they wanted to?
Right.
Which, if you're going to be at the polls all day, I mean, we all know how long election day is. It's pretty long, and you're going to have to use the bathroom at one
At
point
some
or
point,
another.
yeah.
And if that site has no accessible bathroom, I mean, that may turn off a person with a disability to be a poll worker, which is something that many may want but be turned off from.
So when you did this documentary with these two people, and then did you bring this back to SIL and say, hey, this is what I found out, do you think we could look at doing a grant? How did that, then from that, how did that whole beginning start?
Well, we had the video. They made the documentary, and we watched it. We viewed it all, and Keith was the one that hooked me up with Melissa, or Melissa hooked up with me. Found me, and from there we went and we said, wow, this is something that could actually really be
Move forward and
yes,
gain some
exactly, move forward.
leverage here, yeah.
And it could be something for our area, Northeast PA. We did the 4 counties. That was where our surveys took place: Lackawanna, Susquehanna, Wyoming, and Luzerne. And of that, we had 80 surveys we got back from Lackawanna County, and there's 163 places in Lackawanna County
To vote?
To vote.
Okay.
So I mean, 80 out of 163. That's a pretty good number. We got 13 surveys out of Susquehanna County, there's 43 sites, so that's not too bad. 8 surveys out of Wyoming County, out of 30, and then 19 out of Luzerne County, and that's 186 voting sites. So we need a little more work on
Yeah.
getting more
Responses,
surveys
yeah,
in-
but still,
in
that's not
Luzerne
bad.
County. But yeah, we're you know, every election, we push towards surveys, and you know, we're getting the word out, and we're
It's
getting
working.
good result, you know, we're getting the results back, and then we could bring them to county officials and, you know, election staff.
Did that happen yet? That part of it with the bringing, as Christian's saying now, where you want to get the commissioners and that meeting, has that happened, or is that something you have to do next?
Preliminarily, we had first of all, we had meetings to introduce ourselves, to seal what this grant was about, why we were doing the surveys, and we sent information to all 4 voter registration bureaus. We had meetings with 3 out of the 4. We've not met with Luzerne yet. They're the only ones who we haven't been able to meet yet, but we are working on that. Then after it would have been the first go-around of elections. It would have been the general election last year. We had meetings with directors of the voter registration bureaus about what we found preliminary, what some of the problems were, how they could be resolved. But now, this last election in the spring, and the one coming up now in the fall, the general election, we really worked on increasing the numbers of surveys being taken, which is another reason why we appreciate the opportunity to be on your show today, is that we would want to invite any of your viewers with or without a disability who may be interested in surveying their sites to get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that they get a survey. Even if it's a place that has already been surveyed, we encourage that as well, because after we get the results to the Voter Registration Bureau, that's a way to monitor what, if any, progress has been made after it's reported.
So are you asking people to help with the survey, the giving out of the survey during the day, or how does that work?
They can contact our office, we can get the survey to them, that in turn, we would ask them to take that hard copy, the printed
Right.
copy with them when they go to vote in November.
fill it out.
And return it to us.
Okay, so no one is actually at the actual voting area with surveys?
No.
No, okay, so
No.
that's, all right, I wondered if that was something you needed, okay.
No.
Really, all we needed was, you know, some of the places we only have 1 survey per site.
Okay,
You know, a couple of them 2 or 3, but really just 1 to get an idea. It's more of getting the whole blanket of the area as
Okay.
opposed to multiple at one.
okay, and then Tom, as far as Marty Flynn's standpoint on this, I know we talked a little bit about that, but obviously, this is a no-brainer. The more people out, the more vote. Hopefully, it's in the favor of people who want them to win.
Hopefully, it's in the favor.
So
But
that,
it doesn't-
it
not that
doesn't
it doesn't
matter, I
matter,
know
but-
that. But is this something, you were saying earlier, there's strong support of this all the way around, right?
I think most of the people, and I hope that this is true, but I genuinely believe that most of the people that are elected to public office genuinely care for the public good and want to see people engaged and want people involved in the process and want people to express themselves and fight for what they believe in. And it starts with voting. For this, Sharon Quinn came to me and I volunteer with the League of Women Voters as well. And about a year ago, the League of Women Voters, Lackawanna County, did this same, not exactly the same survey, but the same concept. And through that, Sharon came to me and I volunteered to help it again. And through our last process with the League, the response from the Lackawanna County Commissioners, the 3 of them, as well as the director of the voter registration office, was terrific. They want everything to be right. They genuinely want
Right.
things to be right, and they want to see more people involved, not just your state representative Marty and the Northeast delegation in the Senate, but I really believe that if someone is an elected official, they want people involved in this. And again, we have to remember that we have to look for every little thing that's going to discourage someone from voting, and also from volunteering. As Christian said, if he in his heart wants to work and be involved in that process, he shouldn't be denied that right.
Right.
And bathroom accessibility is a pretty important thing. You're there for 12 hours or more. Actually, you have to set up. You have to. You're there for 14 hours. So this is important to all of these people. It truly is.
Christian, what would you want to say to anyone watching? What would you like them to understand from your standpoint, from the fight you have to get this to people to understand? Tell everybody from your standpoint, what is it you need them to know?
Just to be aware of accessibility and how important that is. I haven't always realized that because, I have an acquired disability. I had a snowboarding accident when I was 18. So, before that, I've lived, a regular life, not in a wheelchair, and I took everything, everything was accessible to a person that was walking that was 17 years old. But then, once I became disabled, I was like, wow, that place is no longer accessible, even though it seemed that way to a 17-year-old. And I think if everybody can understand what accessibility is compared, when you call somewhere and they say, yeah, that place is accessible. Well, not exactly. Mm-hmm. Me and my friends and myself, they learned what accessibility is. And
you're educating them,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, they're like, oh, that place isn't accessible. And they could tell me right away whether it's, well, I shouldn't say a bar. I should know.
No, that's okay, though. You are a young man. That's okay.
But and the number one thing is voting sites. I don't think everybody's into like politics as myself, but to myself, I think voting sites are the most important over your bars or restaurants and any. We're in America, and it should be voting sites that are perfectly accessible, not somewhat accessible or, getting there, but it should be done by now. We're going on the, the 24th anniversary of the ADA coming up this month. And, I think voting sites should be leading the accessibility.
I agree with that.
Progress.
Mm-hmm. Instead of, like you said, the bars and restaurants have to be compliant, are, a given right that we fought for. It needs to have the same regulation and standards that you do if you do go to a restaurant or bar. And that's a great point to bring back to you, Keith. You have this experience. How many years have you always
Since
been?
birth.
Since birth.
Right.
Wow. So you look at it from a completely different standpoint which is neat about both of you being here. His is a different way of looking at it than yours. You've always been in this position. I remember years ago, Keith, we did a show when the cuts in the sidewalk. Remember we were talking about
That's right.
lack of, and you had to go around and all those.
We gave examples of dodging around up and down driveways and up around sidewalks because the lack of curb cuts.
Mm-hmm. And look at where we've come today.
Right.
So how do you feel going forward about this?
Well, one thing, just touching on the sidewalk, and I think it deals with issues with access in general. You're right. We've made a lot of progress, but we can't become complacent.
Right.
And we can't have the notion that because we've attained some progress that it stop and everything is, it's all roses. We're looking through rose-colored glasses. That can't be. Advocacy and empowerment issues and accessibility is an ongoing, lifelong issue. For example, we know of areas of the counties or different areas that the SIL, Center for Independent Living, serves that are more accessible than others in terms of curb cuts. And obviously you get into downtown areas, generally around courthouses, business districts, and more of those areas are being cut, but we need to get more areas accessible in the residential districts. Mm-hmm. Same principle applies to Waller County voter registration sites. And where we're particularly seeing the need to get the word across for accessibility is in the rural areas, because some people with disabilities are isolated and living in beautiful, beautiful areas in terms of scenic and rustic and wonderful communities and great people, all of that, but who sometimes have a problem with inaccessible schools or inaccessible post offices, auditoriums, other buildings where we've seen instances of access that could really be improved. Access is for all, not just for a chosen few.
Absolutely. Very good. And Thomas, anything else from you?
Keith touched on something that's a hot button for me, and that is certainly the curb cuts are continuing to be made, and Main Avenue in West Scranton through North Scranton, curb cuts, it's going to be paved, and with that, curb cuts will be made all along that entire route from Old Forge up to North Scranton. But
And thank God they waited till Novena was over.
Yeah, they're waiting till the
That's
Novena,
good.
so it's
That was a good
rescheduled.
thing.
That's right.
Good St. Anne, that was good.
But the number of people that don't think and park not just on the sidewalk, but totally obstruct the sidewalk. I'm sure Scranton's not the only one, but you drive through almost any street in Scranton, and okay, if you're parked up on the sidewalk, I understand that maybe two cars can't get by and you have to park up on the sidewalk a little bit, but don't park in the middle of the sidewalk and totally obstruct the sidewalk. And if you drive down Cedar Avenue, if you drive down Pittston Avenue, if you go up Music Street in Scranton, the top 4 blocks, if you go down sections of Main Avenue in Scranton, any side street in the city, and okay, I'll give you, park up on the curb a little bit, but allow these two guys
to be
access for their chair,
Exactly.
or a person with a baby carriage or a stroller. I mean, what do they do then when they come to you blocking the entire
Right.
the entire sidewalk? It's just when they block the entire sidewalk, I want to send Marty Flynn out to move the car himself, and he'll do it.
And he would do it. He'd pick it up and move it, let alone get in and do it.
Get into a boxing match.
It's true. It's true. But
He just might move the car.
and that's what I said. He'll pick it right up. But you're absolutely right. I mean, because that has to be frustrating. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. Did you?
Oh yeah, a number of times. But furthermore, how Thom is an advocate toward this, and he's able-bodied. He's able to walk around. It's that getting this message out, and hopefully our accessibility survey will help with that. Bringing it to people that aren't necessarily in wheelchairs or having a disability, but they're able to see this survey, and the little light bulb goes off and says, "Wow, yeah, how about that? I didn't realize that." And
Yeah.
just like how Thom sees the cars on the sidewalks, not many people
Are thinking that
notice
way, right?
that.
Yeah.
But it's good to hear that you are, and hopefully more get it now after they
After
watch
this,
this.
absolutely. And that's what the purpose of this is, because you out there watching us talk about access to voting in general, but it's not, this grant is about voting, but it's about everything. It's about respect for people who are different or who have other ways of getting around than you do and I do. It's to think about it, and if they're not lucky enough to have been able to watch the show through Comcast. If you don't have Comcast, there's a problem. Dish the ditch and get Comcast. I said, I'll ditch that dish and get Comcast. But seriously, tell other people. Tell them that this is important. People need to be able to vote. People need to register to vote. People need to be able to go in with the changing population, as you said earlier, baby boomers. Things are a change in there. You never know, it might be a temporary setback, as you said, Keith.
Yeah.
All of these things are going to happen. And we need to have accessibility to what we need to do to be an American, to exercise our right to vote, and to realize that there are other people like Keith
And that we can be
Christian.
that other person anytime.
Right,
Granted, we're going to
exactly.
face these as we age, but also Christian, from a 17-year-old snowboarding to an accident now where he has these issues. And it can happen to any one of us anytime.
Right.
We're one wrong turn away from that same thing happening to us.
Can we give the phone number where somebody
Absolutely,
can
go
access
right
a
ahead.
copy of the survey? You can contact the center at 1-800-344-7211, or if you'd like to email us for a copy, we'll make sure we get it right back to you. You can contact us at info, info@mycil.org. And we'd be glad to get a copy of the survey to anybody.
Or
We
even
encourage you to.
If you wanted more
contact us.
information, or talk to Keith, talk to Christian, people there who can share, and anyone who's there can help you get a better understanding of how this works, why the grant was put forth, why you applied for it, why it was approved, which is the best news, and to have you understand that this is a very important subject. It's very important for you to know, and spread the word. If they're not watching, tell everybody about it. Respect that. Don't park your car on the sidewalk so that these two guys and anyone else can get through, and Tom will be watching. It doesn't have to be in West Side, it could be anywhere.
And definitely don't park across a curb cut.
Absolutely. Do
We've seen-
people do that?
Yeah, we've seen a few.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
I'll try-
I've seen a few.
oftentimes,
Sometimes
though-
there'll be one in the middle of the block, near just up from a driveway, and, yeah, I've seen people
Do you
park
yell
out-
at people?
Park out, well, usually
If you
when I
see them,
approach.
would you yell at them?
Oh, yeah, if I would see them, but a lot of times when I get there, they're not
Hold 'em
there.
back.
Yeah, I know.
They're not there.
You have to hold them back?
He'll put his
Because he'll,
boxing gloves on and
I can monogram
Marty
their
and I
car
would
for
want
them.
you.
yeah, that one too. Yeah, so it's just important, and I think when you hear it from, we have two guys here who know what it's like to live their life and getting around in a wheelchair, and people who don't necessarily have. It isn't just about that. It's eye issues. It's many things that we need help. So please pay attention, live it, and understand these guys are. Every day getting up and trying to make the most and make a difference in the lives, their lives and others, and getting this information. So Christian, I thank you for doing that, and I'm sure you were a smash on that documentary. I'll have to check it out. Were you? Were you like a star? Your mother said you were.
a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know.
How many offers he's had from Hollywood.
I know, and
Yeah.
how old are you now, honey?
I am 26 years old.
Wow,
Yeah.
long time ago then, huh?
Yeah.
And you're doing okay.
I'm rolling.
All right, rolling is the word. All right, and you're doing okay. We know.
Doing well.
Voting since which year?
Voting, no, and earlier you said 1920.
20, I said.
No, I'll tell the truth.
Woodrow Wilson.
When I turned 18, so there was 1978.
There he goes. That's when
Right.
he's been voting,
Jimmy?
and he gets in there.
Jimmy.
Jimmy
Yeah,
Carter.
for Jimmy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see,
at the
well.
time. And just quickly, from another perspective, having a disability on the other side of the election process, I'm in my third year as a council person.
Where?
For the borough
And-
of Clarks Green.
Oh,
President.
very nice.
Yeah.
I didn't
No,
know that.
only vice.
So
only
you
vice
have to, you have to run for that, so you do the,
Right.
wow, I didn't realize that. Third term?
No, third year.
Third
my
year.
First term.
Okay, and how many, what are they, 4-year terms?
4-year terms.
Well, congratulations. Are you
Thank
gonna
you.
run again?
Thank you.
I'll have to call a few people on that one.
I'm only running
We'll
for the
see what
border.
happens.
You know, I don't.
Now, is that, where you vote, how's the access there?
Very accessible.
There you go, okay.
Very accessible.
Tom, thank you very much. Did you
My
have anything
pleasure.
else you want to soapbox
No,
before
I'll
we
save the
leave?
other issues for another time.
Okay, but he got
I've
the
got
point. So Tom, thanks for helping us out today.
Yep.
And thanks to Marty and everybody who's supporting this and making sure it works, and all your work
Thank you
doing
for your
this.
help in
Yeah.
spreading the word.
We're happy to do it.
We appreciate it. This is a wonderful resource, and
Well,
we
thank you.
appreciate you helping the center get the word out.
Thank you. We're happy to do it. And Christian, nice to meet you, and you did a wonderful job.
Pleased to meet you. It
Thank
was
you.
great.
What did you say before, when you came in? You said I'm not too what? You were asking what kind of person I was, an
You're not
interviewer?
too frightening.
Frightening, see?
Did I say that?
No, something like that, but intimidating, that was the word. And what do you
Intimidating.
think? How'd I do?
You didn't intimidate me.
There you go. See, I
Too
I
bad.
intimidate some people, though, you know. Some, but we won't
We've
go
heard.
there. Anyway, all right.
Let's
so-
do a show on that.
On intimidation or
Yeah.
intimidating
No,
people?
I know you're
All right, well, we'd like to thank you once again. Again, the show is brought to you for the benefit of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Center for Independent Living, and the constant need and awareness that people need to know that when you are voting, make sure your voting places are accessible to anyone who has a disability so that they can exercise their right to vote. So remember that and get out there and vote, and we'll see you real soon. I'm Laurie Cadden, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.